All right. All right. Well, Roger, I want to say thank you again for joining my show. Usually I talk to other Christians and debate and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting having you, since, you and I are pretty much a little bit more like-minded and come from the same kind of place of, rejecting religion and whatnot. So to all my followers, welcome to Atheists Having Cocktails with Christians. That's the show's title. And so we're going to do a little bit different, where I usually, like I said, talk to a Christian. But today I'm talking to the man, Roger Martinez. Now, everybody has been giving me shit for months. They're like, he's not going to do it. He's fucking with you. He's pulling your leg. I'm like, he's busy, man. Like, people have lives. So to all the assholes that doubted me, I made it happen. And thank you, Roger. All right.
And thank you. And again, bro, this isn't my look. I mean, I had a cervical and spinal fusion surgery, which has literally kept me in bed for months, and it's going to be months more. I should be walking by summer, and it's a very expensive surgery, but they didn't tell me I'd be in bed this long. I mean, I literally can't get to my kitchen. My lady has to do everything for me. So, fortunately she does.
Well, it's great to have a woman on your side like that. You know what I mean?
It is.
Yeah. My wife, it's been a year now, but her dad was needing a kidney, or he wasn't going to survive. And she was actually a match and gave her dad a kidney. So it's been a year now. So it's been awesome to have that, great woman support. You know what I mean? So when they do it for us, we got to do it for them,
So again, my idea is that like once a month we do a taping and allow it to be interactive, and so that each month you'll see me look better and better and better. So
definitely. Well, that's the thing.
I apologize for this. And the photo in the back there, we went on a month-long vacation cruise in Europe, in Russia and the Baltic Ocean and all over Finland. I mean, everywhere. So those were a bunch of folk dance friends that we went with. And so that's what that picture is.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I definitely think, your story is, I think, just probably one of the most interesting in the Christian music scene. You know what I mean? Vengeance was the pioneers, in my opinion, of extreme Christian metal. There was nobody doing what you guys were doing, and then, or even if there was a little bit, but you guys were like the main front of the scene for quite a while.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, so definitely, I'd like to do this at least, once a month, and, kind of focus on not only your story and where you've been in your life and where you're going and what led you to where you are today, but also, just recount some of the things that maybe got you here, that, the scene was maybe pushed you, maybe people, and, just realizations and whatnot, where, you finally had to say, I can't be part of this anymore because,
right.
And I think that
I graduated. I graduated from religion to humanity. I found to love the world instead of to condemn most of them as being the damned tools of Satan, spreading doctrines of demons and shit. I feel so much better when I walk down the street looking at people, because essentially I see the good in people. And I believe that most people are really trying to do their best to be good people. And so for religion to cause that bigotry to separate people like that as it does, it's just, because I pushed it for 10 years, I'm now looking to do things that I can to reverse that in as many lives. And I'm out of the thousands of letters, that I've gotten, there's nice to when people come to me and say, Raj, I was able to come out of it just like you did. And now I can see the good in people versus what I was seeing before, which was somebody who was smiling at you, but they were the damned. They were going to the lake of fire, and that's just where they were. So, that was the difference between you and them on the planet, whether you look at the, again, the Catholic and Protestant wars in Northern Ireland, man. Those people, they're both theists, and they hate each other, man. I mean, it's like, it's just nuts.
Well,
What's that?
Well, and especially, you think of since post 9/11 and whatnot, Muslims and Christians and Jews have such similar theology when it comes to their religions. But look how many years these people have been destroying and killing each other under the name of a certain area that they're supposed to, their God said they could live. You know what I mean?
And again, Christianity to me, having been involved in it as a preacher, as a propagator, as a it's a delusionary psychosis, man. That's straight up what it is. And the reason I don't use the term Muslim is because it means true follower of God. So if you looked at the Iran and Iraq war, where for 10 years they were murdering each other, well, which ones were the true followers? So I use
I hear you.
Mohammedan.
Yeah.
Mohammedanism, meaning people who adhere to the writings of Muhammad, but they'll kill each other. So
Mhm.
I'm like, look, guys, why don't you just drop all of that, care about each other, and then everybody can get along?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's whatever. Like I say, whether it's the Christians, rather, again, that's delusionary psychosis. The Catholics and the Protestants, or whether it's the Iran and Iraq war,
Mhm.
it's the same mess, man. So I hope that people can graduate from religion to humanity, and this series to be part of that. So let me do my intro real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, Again, I want to thank you, Simon, for putting this all together, because again, I really did want to get back to all the people who had written and bought the albums and come and saw me preach and all of that stuff over the years, but I simply never got around to it.
Yeah.
And so that people can understand where I'm coming from, I'd like to say firstly that I have been an anti-theist since the 90s. That's anti-theist. Most commonly identified as atheists, such as Ricky Gervais, George Carlin, Christopher Hitchens, and a huge list of others.
Mhm.
And as I
Amazing.
begin to, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And as I begin to get into question number one, as to my introduction to the church from 1962, when I was born, um, I would like to give the viewers a profoundly useful tool to understand where I stand on many issues. And the tool is a free copy of Christopher Hitchens' book, God is Not Great. So whether you're
Amazing book.
driving in your, I'm sorry?
That's an amazing book. Yeah, I've read it 2
It
times.
is.
It's an
And
amazing
so
book.
whether the person watching right now is, driving in their car sometimes or relaxing at the beach, it's a really great listen, and you get it for free.
Amazing.
All you have to do, it's a $25 book, but you get it on Audible for free. It's audible.com, audible.com, and you get the whole book read by Christopher Hitchens himself at no charge. So additionally, for those who are going to have any questions that you and I talk about, Simon,
Mhm.
they can call me at 424-744-6838 and leave a question in my voicemail. And I'll try to listen to those at least once a week before we film our next session. And that way you can put that number at the bottom of the screen, however
Yeah.
you want to. So this is going to be an interactive exchange, everybody. It's not just me
Yeah.
talking and you listening. It's you talking to me, I talking to you. We're talking, and I would like to see 2023 be a really great year for this to launch some lifelong friendships, and growth.
Mhm.
And so, to answer your first question about my introduction to the church, in my early years, my mother was Catholic. So I remember as a child being taken to these elaborately beautiful architecture of Catholic churches. And for a child, it's incredible eye candy. You get all the lit candles in the building, you get these lifelike statues, paintings, stained glass. It's breathtaking for a kid. And I mean, before I was even at school. So naturally, as a kid, I had no depth of insight as to what it was all about, nor of the homosexual molestations that were occurring, as well as the heterosexual fornications and adultery. So in the past several decades, the vast amounts of money paid to victims, it's been stunning to both anti-theists such as myself and religious individuals alike. It looked nice, but what was going on and what has been going on, and I'll get into that over the months, because there's some stuff that people
Yeah.
really need to consider. And
Well,
during
it's
our
just
sessions, I'm
amazing
going to be
how
using the term.
it's
I'm
just
sorry.
amazing how these people that are part of this organization who know the atrocities that these people are doing, that one, allow them to keep covering it up. What was the one was about 2 years ago, the state of New York.
There's a whole bunch of them. There's
Well,
a
this was
whole
the latest
bunch of the
one I
big
remember.
wigs in the line of succession that have been
Yeah.
just yeah. I mean, it
And
goes
that
all the
they
way up to the
still,
top.
will go week after week and fork over that money when they know that money is going to protect pedophiles.
Man, that's really bizarre. I mean, it's bizarre. And
Yeah.
but that's again the thing. I think that most people that attend those places are really trying just to be good people. I don't think they're giving money thinking, hey man, this can happen. I think they're really just trying to be good people. And this is what they were brought up. This is what they were raised. This is what Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan and currently Joe Biden, who's Catholic, is telling them, hey, it's all right. And it's like, it's not all right.
No,
It's not all right. And so during our sessions, I am going to be using the term anti-theist to identify myself, as did Christopher Hitchens, who I'm going to be referring to now and then. And whereas we are atheists, I think the term anti-theist gives people something a little bit more to think about. And because many people think of atheism as it pertains to the delusionary psychosis of Christianity. And yet, for instance, just the other day in the news, it's reported that Afghanistan, the theists they've made it illegal for women to either work or go to university. So we're anti-theists. So it's not just a United States thing, it's global.
Yes.
Wherever theism is harming people in any way, shape, or form, misleading them, giving them false hopes, we're saying, hey, humanity's a lot better than that. We can do better than that. And so, so that's what's going on. And throughout my years, there were various stages. I was dabbling in religion going on, prior to becoming a teenager. When I was in like the 5th grade or thereabouts, there was a Jewish couple, Asa and Annette Dayu, and they had invited me to their home, to their church. And my mother, who by this time had become a full-blown alcoholic, she didn't mind me going anywhere with anybody so long as she could go to the bar. Yeah. And she ended up killing herself by cirrhosis of the liver and good riddance. Yeah. So now Asa and Annette were Jews who had renounced any affiliation with Judaism for full-blown Pentecostal tongue-waggling, babbling nonsense for Jesus.
Those were my churches.
What's that?
Those were the churches I went to, the full-on Pentecostal, speaking in tongues, casting demons out, going to see people like Benny Hinn, the faith healers.
Oh, Benny Hinn and Peter Popoff. And
oh yeah.
Who knows, And so when they took me to their church, the adults were just babbling incoherent nonsense, and they weren't speaking in Taiwanese or Mandarin or Cantonese or Tagalog or even Spanish. Yeah. They were babbling just incoherent nonsense. And the location that church was not far from Jen Jones's People's Temple in Los Angeles. So the day he was home, they would have sessions for what they called tarrying, where persons were to seek the Holy Spirit's intervention and cause speaking in tongues. And now get this, a friend of mine who had been going there for quite some time and had still not achieved speaking in tongues was there with me. And I mean, we were young children, we were elementary school kids. And when I got there on the first event, after about 15 minutes, I was bored out of my mind. Mm-hmm. And so I began to emulate what the adults were doing. And I simply started jumbling vowels and consonants. And the adults were thrilled I'd achieved it. My friend burst into tears and they asked him, well, why are you crying? And he said, well, I want to know why the Holy Spirit hasn't selected me to speak in tongues. I've been doing this for a lot longer than he's even been around. And I thought, this has got to be a sick joke. And that nipped it in the bud for my dabbling with Pentecostalism. I mean, that poor kid, it was a nightmare. So in the next section, I'll take you further into what occurred in my teenage years, which was primarily extensive fornications with the girls on the beach in Los Angeles who wore bikinis. Yeah. And if you couldn't close the deal with the girl who was wearing a bikini because she definitely wanted to feel sexy, I just don't know what to say. But religion became removed from our minds as our teenage sexuality blossomed. And religion eventually did come back to playing as the likes of Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan and many others were pushing it as the end-all be-all. And as I told you, Simon, I can literally go on this first question for 2 hours, but I'll
Yeah.
keep it brief so that each session is fresh to the
Yeah.
people watching. And so you asked me about my introduction to Christian music. And as I remember it, an old friend of mine was getting into religion, and he would invite me to a religious concert. And basically, I'd be drinking before we went and ended up sleeping with the girl who went there with us after the concert. I mean, you know, it's just what it was. So it just seemed like nights to party, and nothing really came of it. And I'll have to go back and ask my friends from that period of time if they remember or my conversion from Catholicism to Protestantism actually kicked in. It was somewhere in my teenage years. I do remember, um, you know, that I would literally watch television a lot with these religious programs, and I would go to the television station where there was this one guy who made religion interesting. His name was Gene Scott, and so I would go to the television station and answer the phones for him, called the King's House. I still hadn't made the commitment to the religion, but I was very interested in the things he was talking about. He made it, interesting. So in
Yeah.
any case, he had a band that they would play comedy songs as part of his television show. And I mean, I would see this stuff live. So I began writing songs myself and playing them at a Bible study. And so for those songs, I ended up, uh, you know, doing mostly punk rock comedy songs, and I threw in some power rock stuff, and then I ended up putting together an actual rock band. And on the first Vengeance albums, you'll see that I still had thanked the likes of Gene Scott and Dr. Walter Martin, people who had made the studies interesting and relevant for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll get more into that on the next Zoom session. And the question 3 was, why did I choose extreme metal? And again, at first I didn't. Originally, again, I was doing comedy punk songs, power ballads, and then we started a group called Prophet, and it was simply rock and roll that we called metal for the master. And so the element of thrash metal came into the picture as Slayer became the top dog of the genre. And with the multitude of other bands like Morbid Angel and Deicide, I simply found the idea of using that style of music to reach people listening to those bands would be useful, and so it was.
Now,
And that's really,
let me
I'm sorry.
interject in this. Let me interject in this real quick.
Yeah.
About that. I mean, for me growing up, my parents were very adamant against, especially I grew up, in Ventura, with punk rock, bands like, Ill Repute and Aggression, and punk was my first music. And then I found metal. When I found Suicidal Tendencies, that kind of changed things for me. Then I found Slayer, because Metallica never did it for me. I always thought, found Slayer and was like, fuck, this is it. And then after that, I really got more into the more extreme, like, still to this day, my favorite extreme band is Napalm Death. Like, all the British bands that were coming out, Bolt Thrower, you know what I mean, Carcass, all the British bands. And so we weren't allowed to have that music in our house. You know,
Right.
I mean? If my mom found it, we were in trouble. So as a young kid, wanting to be cool and still listen to the music that I loved, and going to the Christian bookstore, man, I must have seen Petra and Carmen and White Cross. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I hated going to these shows because it wasn't what I was about.
Right.
So when I found Vengeance and The Crucified and Deliverance, I was at least somewhat happy, that there was music that I could enjoy. But also, when you were saying you were in your teen years, still trying to, still doing your thing, for me, up until probably around, 14, 15, probably 15, 16, I wanted to be a youth pastor. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a bass player, and I wanted to be you guys. I wanted to play Christian extreme metal. I wanted to minister. I wanted to go to the youth, like you guys were doing with me. And you will not remember this, but this was one of the nicest things ever. Was the first time we came down from Ventura to Sanctuary when you were preaching, and it was awesome because you guys didn't start till like 2 PM, so it was great.
Right.
And so we drove down the hour, and George Ochoa was there, and I was talking with him, and Victor Macias was there and was talking with him. And then you came out and you preached, and it was great. And you gave me a couple of the tapes that you had, you know what I mean, of your ministry,
Yeah.
of your sermons. But after that, you had just gotten done recording Destruction Comes, and you had a bunch of pictures for the album, and you were like, come on, Steve, come up here. So, we're up at the podium and we were talking, and you were like, which picture do you think is the coolest? And it was the one with you that you chose with the guitar on the back of the album, And I was like, dude, that one's sick. That one's so good. And you're like, I think I'll use it. Whether you did or not, there was kindness that radiated from you. You know what I mean? So I just did want to say always thank you for being an asshole about that kind of stuff, because I've done security many years.
Not at all, man.
And met a lot of really nice people, whether Christian or not. But again, going back to the extreme, it's just, I argue with this on Christians. I don't believe in Christian metal anymore. I don't believe metal can be Christian. You know what I mean? It comes from a secular place that is filled with aggression and machismo and whatnot. I think that the people, and no offense to anybody that's been in a Christian band, but I think you're basically hijacking something that is not Christian, trying to make it Christian just so that you can be in a band and feel better about yourself and your belief system.
And whereas I would definitely hold the diametrically opposite position to that, because again, I believe everybody's just trying to do their best. And so, whether it's a style of music that they like or whatever, again, when you say Christian, it's again a delusionary psychosis that they're in touch with Jesus in outer space, and they're getting words of wisdom, words of knowledge. Some people are speaking in tongues, some people are doing charity work, and they're all to do the right thing. They don't believe that they're in error. And so I think whatever style music somebody's playing, it's irrelevant. But if they can graduate from religion to humanity and drop the bigotry, that is super cool. So, and again, just one point I do want to make, even as much as I love Slayer and Suicidal and all that shit, dude, Metallica with songs like Fight Fire with Fire, and those first albums, man, they had some badass jams, and they weren't technically the genre, but they were like the kings of it all, selling multi-millions, where and have great music, man. So that was like, I would go to their concerts and watch how their stage crew did the set up and the tear down and blah 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 and this and that, and they impressed the living daylights out of me, man. But but I mean, again, for the genre that we were doing, Slayer was it, Suicidal was it, that stuff was super cool.
And for the Christian realm, it was, man, you guys were ground zero. You know what I mean? Like, nobody sounded like that, and like, and nothing against Deliverance or Tourniquet or any of those bands, because I think everybody's great musicians, but there was something so shocking about what you guys were doing. Especially, I remember Christian bookstores didn't even want to sell your stuff, you know what I mean, because
that's true.
You know what I mean? Which again goes to this, holier than thou notion of these people are judging based on something they have no knowledge of. So therefore they're sitting right there,
And here's the big thing that's even gnarlier, is that we had Benson distribution, and that was huge. That's why the first two albums way outsold the last two, because that Mormon, Jimmy Kempner, he says he converted back to Protestantism or whatever. They made him a Calvary Chapel pastor, and he came out of Maranatha to do the I guess it was Intense, was a Frontline was the label. And dude, it's one of those things where, see, where's my starting point on that thought?
We were talking Metallica, then we kind of went all over, but shit, I lost it too, man. Fuck.
All right, well, it comes back eventually. I do know, because that was an issue, because that was it. The Benson distribution, when that got cut off, so did the album sales. And again, if it wasn't for the thousands upon thousands of letters that I received from fans and people wanting to know more about me and what I was doing, and I was reaching out to them and writing them back, and all of that, I saw that what we were doing, even though the numbers were small, it was only like 100,000 albums, but that's a lot of people for a religious person sitting there writing letters saying, hey, man, I hope everything's well in your world. And so I felt fine about it. I'm like, hey, just it is what it is. It was what it was. And then, I remember when I renounced, the whole kit and caboodle, I called Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, will you please quit selling my albums? I don't believe that shit anymore. I trust me, and even now. So right now, here we are, years later. I hear he died and everything. Good riddance. So it's like, again, I want to believe that people are trying to do the best, but I know that Jimmy Kempner, who I personally confronted on these issues, was full of shit, just straight up full of shit. And
Yeah.
so, your fourth question, to move on to that, was how was the Christian music scene working in the 80s and 90s, clubs, labels, money? And really, it was so far at the low end of the totem pole as far as the music industry goes. All the bands were different. Everybody was doing their own thing. And it's really way too boring to go into, to be quite frank with you. I mean, Slayer was the largest selling
Yeah.
and touring act of the day.
I guess the
And
short and sweet of it would just be for the label. It was. Let's be honest. I mean, these people weren't signing you because they cared about kids on the street. You know what I mean? They wanted to make cash. That's it.
that is definitely what happened. That
Yeah.
is definitely what happened.
They saw a commodity
And it
and
was
said,
proved
we
to
don't,
be.
we don't like this commodity, but we'll use it so we can make more money.
And the thing about it was, we had signed in for 50% of the publishing royalties. And Kempner literally told me, said, Roger, well, we need you to sign over 100% of your publishing royalties to us so that we can propagate the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they wanted 100% of my royalties so that they could go on vacation, buy their cars, pay their mortgages. Well, I ended up literally getting kicked out on the street by an International Church of Foursquare Gospel because I didn't have the money for the goddamn rent. And I'm like, oh, you bastards, and I was like, you people are evil, man. And so that they could propagate the gospel. That's they were making money and they
Yeah.
were spending it on their luxuries and leaving people like me out high and dry in the cold and with nada. So, and again, Slayer sold over 2.5 million albums, and we only sold over 100,000, but it was still a decent, still over $1 million in profit share.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so that was what was going on with us and with Benson Records and what ultimately became whatever system that they used to distribute the last two of VR albums. And again, if it wasn't for those thousands of letters I got, I would have been bummed out, but I felt like I was doing and I had achieved what I wanted to do. And it wasn't on my shoulders alone, it was everybody's responsibility, all the different bands, the churches, and what have you. And then, you know, again, if there's people who have specific questions, what you and I over the next months will get to,
Definitely.
back to them. But right now, let's move on to your question number 5. How did I get appointed head pastor at Sanctuary?
Yeah,
And the
real quick, because my session, because I don't pay for Zoom, I just get it for free. So I have 7 minutes left before they kick us off. So
okay, well, we can get to how did I get appointed next time? That's cool. That's cool.
If you just want to do a little skim thing, we can. You know what I mean? If it's really if it's going to be, you want to get into some stuff, we'll save it for the next time then.
Okay, no, I'll be able to kick this one out in about 2 or 3.
Okay.
It was a simple ceremony headed by Bob Beeman, who would file the necessary paperwork to be able to appoint pastors. And I had already been doing seminars in the United States at various churches around about spiritual implications of music, whether it be secular or, Christian. And so my ability to preach a sermon was reasonably well known. And people like Oz Fox, who's actually a Martinez, he would give me a thumbs up. A lot of people saw the seminar and said, hey, this guy can preach. And so at the same time, I was working in construction, driving a delivery van 8 hours a day. And I would listen to KKLA 99.5 FM in Los Angeles, which at the time had the likes of Dr. Walter Martin and heavy hitters all day long while I was driving. So after a couple of years of that, I was definitely able to produce sermons with no problem. And a strange thing happened after I was appointed. I no longer had to pay taxes like everybody else in the United States because I was sent multi-$1,000 checks every year from the government because I was in touch with Jesus in outer space. It's a hell of a scam. It's a hell of a scam. And once I renounced it, I found that paying taxes was a pleasant thing to do because at least that way, I was somehow actually contributing to the benefit of people in society. So yeah, okay, that's about all we can get to today. And dude, thank you so much. So can you send me a copy of this? I love the way you did the intro, like on